My mother stood up in court and told the judge I was too mentally ill to inherit my own grandmother's money. The same grandmother who raised me after my mother abandoned me at 14. The same grandmother my mother hadn't visited in 15 years. And I sat there, silent, watching her dig her own grave. The judge, Helen Foster, mid-60s, silver hair, reading glasses, listened to my mother's attorney finish his opening statement. Then she looked at him with this expression I'd seen 38 times before. It was the look she made when something didn't add up. She turned to Jason Merrick, my mother's young attorney in his too big suit, and asked him a simple question. "Counselor, do you truly have no idea who this woman is? The woman your client just called mentally incompetent?" Jason blinked, looked at his notes, looked at me, looked back at the judge. My mother's face went from confident to confused to dead pale in about 4 seconds. "Let me back up. My name is Kate Sanders. I'm 33, and I work as a certified fraud examiner in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For the past 7 years, I've specialized in elder financial abuse, forged checks, fake powers of attorney, manipulated wills. I've seen every trick in the book. I've testified as an expert witness in 38 cases. 31 ended in conviction. 11 of those testimonies happened in Judge Helen Foster's courtroom. She once told another attorney, on the record, that I was one of the most credible expert witnesses she'd encountered in 20 years on the bench. My mother had no idea. We hadn't spoken in 19 years. Here's what you need to understand about my mother, Rita Thornton. When I was 14, my parents divorced. My father moved to Oregon. My mother remarried within 3 months to Dennis Thornton, who owned 3 laundromats in Racine County. And my mother decided her new life had no room for her old daughter. She didn't fight for custody. She didn't call on my birthday. She sent exactly 1 Christmas card the first year. Nothing after that. I was raised by my grandmother, Eleanor Sanders, in a small house in Eau Claire. Grandma Eleanor was a retired elementary school teacher who'd never made more than $42,000 a year. But she was careful. She tracked every penny. She balanced her checkbook every Sunday morning with coffee, exactly 2 sugars and a splash of whole milk. That woman could account for every dollar she'd spent since 1987. She taught me everything I know. She just didn't realize she was training a fraud examiner. Grandma Eleanor passed away 8 months ago. Congestive heart failure. She was 81 and went peacefully in her sleep. I was holding her hand. She left me everything. The house, worth about $285,000. Her savings, $167,400. A small life insurance policy. She'd earned every cent teaching 3rd graders to read for 36 years. 3 weeks after her funeral, I got a letter from Jason Merrick. My mother was contesting the will. According to the letter, Rita claimed Eleanor had been suffering from mental decline. She claimed I'd isolated my grandmother from family. She claimed I'd manipulated a vulnerable elderly woman into leaving me everything. The woman who hadn't visited her mother in 15 years was accusing me of elder abuse. I actually laughed when I read it. Then I stopped laughing because the letter said my mother had documentation. Evidence of my mental instability going back to my teenage years. She was petitioning the court to declare me mentally incompetent and appoint a conservator. The proposed conservator was, of course, Rita Thornton herself. I called my boyfriend Jordan that night. He's a high school history teacher with the kind of family that still has Sunday dinners and keeps photo albums in chronological order. He doesn't understand dysfunction the way I do. He told me I should reach out to my mother. Maybe there'd been a misunderstanding. I love Jordan. I really do. But sometimes he says things that make me wonder if he's ever met an actual human being. My mother remembered the exact dollar amount of my grandmother's estate. $167,400. She put that number in a legal document. She still doesn't know if my birthday is in March or May. Funny how memory works when money's involved. Within 2 weeks, it got worse. My mother filed a petition claiming I was mentally incompetent and needed a conservator appointed immediately. She wanted emergency powers. She wanted my grandmother's accounts frozen. Her evidence was creative. When I was 14, after she abandoned me, I spent 8 months talking to a school counselor about depression and adjustment issues. Normal stuff when your mother decides you're not worth keeping. The counselor wrote that I was struggling with abandonment and low self-worth. My mother's attorney presented this as proof of lifelong mental illness. She also had a signed statement from my stepsister, Stephanie Thornton, Dennis's daughter from his first marriage. According to her statement, I'd always seemed unstable, and she had serious concerns about my ability to manage finances. Stephanie was 9 years old the last time she saw me. I haven't spoken to her in 19 years. But here's the thing about legal proceedings: once someone files a petition like this, the process starts moving. You have to respond, hire an attorney, appear in court, prove you're not crazy. And while you're doing that, word gets out. My firm put me on administrative review. My boss believed me, but the firm couldn't have an expert witness whose mental competency was being questioned in another courtroom. I wasn't fired, but I was benched. No new cases, no testimonies, no work that mattered. 7 years of building my reputation, and my mother dismantled it with one phone call. Dennis and Rita were in financial trouble. Dennis's laundromats were failing. He owed $340,000 to creditors. Their house had a second mortgage. Credit cards maxed. My grandmother's estate wasn't about family. It was about survival. But I didn't know the full scope of what they'd done. Not yet. Jordan and I had our first real fight 2 weeks in. His parents had started asking questions. His mother had gently inquired whether there was anything Jordan didn't know about me. He came over and asked why I wouldn't just take a psychological evaluation to prove I was fine. I told him that wasn't the point. The point was I shouldn't have to prove my sanity because my estranged mother wanted money. He said something about smoke and fire, about how it looked bad that I was refusing to cooperate. I asked him to leave. He left. I sat alone that night looking at the photo of my grandmother on my bookshelf, taken at my college graduation. She was 73 and beaming like I'd just won the Nobel Prize. All I'd done was get a bachelor's degree in accounting, but to her it was everything. She used to say that paper trails don't lie. People can make up stories, but numbers are honest. Numbers tell you exactly what happened if you know how to read them. I decided to read some numbers. I was still listed as joint holder on my grandmother's bank account. She'd added me 2 years before her death for convenience, so I could help pay bills if she got too tired. But I think she was protecting herself, or protecting me. I pulled the bank statements for the last 2 years of her life, created a spreadsheet, tracked every deposit and withdrawal. That's when I found the first crack in my mother's story. In the final 11 months of my grandmother's life, there were 7 withdrawals that didn't match any regular expenses. Just cash withdrawals ranging from $4,000 to $12,000 each. Total, $47,850. Each withdrawal happened within 3 days of a recorded visit from Rita Thornton. My grandmother had started showing signs of mild cognitive decline about a year before she died. Good days and bad days. She'd forget where she put her glasses, then quote poetry from memory an hour later. She wasn't incompetent, but she was vulnerable. And my mother knew it. The woman accusing me of elder abuse had been systematically stealing from her own mother for almost a year. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and coffee, and I did what I do for a living. I investigated. I drove to Eau Claire that weekend to go through her house. Jordan offered to come, but things were still tense. I told him I needed to do this alone. The house smelled like her. Lavender and old books. I found what I was looking for in her safe deposit box at First National Bank. She'd added me to it 5 years ago. I'd only been there once and had forgotten about it entirely. The box contained her jewelry, some savings bonds, her documents, and a brown leather journal I'd never seen before. Dated. First entry from 14 months before her death. Last entry from 6 weeks before she passed. My grandmother had known what was happening to her. She'd documented everything. The first entry nearly broke me. Rita called for the first time in years, sounding sweet and apologetic. She wanted to reconnect. She'd made mistakes. Eleanor wrote that she didn't trust it, but she was old and tired and maybe people could change. The entries got darker. Rita visited in August. Asked to borrow $2,000 for an emergency. Eleanor gave it. October. Dennis was sick, needed help with medical bills. Eleanor gave her $4,000. December. Rita brought Dennis. They asked Eleanor to sign papers to help manage her finances. Eleanor signed them. She wrote that she was having a bad day. Her mind felt foggy. She wasn't sure what she'd agreed to. 2 weeks later, she had a good day. Looked at the papers. Realized they were a power of attorney, giving Rita control over her accounts. She was too ashamed to tell me. That destroyed me. My grandmother, the strongest woman I'd ever known, was too ashamed to admit her own daughter had tricked her. She didn't want me to see her as weak. So she documented everything instead. Every visit. Every withdrawal. Every lie. Paper trails don't lie. The final entry was addressed to me. She was sorry. She tried to tell me but couldn't find the words. She knew Rita would come for the money after she was gone, and she wanted me to have proof. She wanted me to fight. She wrote that she'd always known I was stronger than her. That's why she knew I would win. I sat on the floor of that bank vault and cried for 20 minutes. Then I got to work. The power of attorney was a forgery. Not the signature, my grandmother had signed it, confused and manipulated. But the notarization was fake. The notary stamp belonged to Bob Mitchell, who'd retired in 2019. The document was dated 2024. Someone had used an old stamp on a new document. Sloppy. Obvious. A felony. I started digging into Dennis's background. What I found made my stomach turn. Dennis's first wife died in 2012. His mother in 2017. In both cases, there'd been questions about estates. In both cases, money disappeared. No charges filed, but the patterns were there. Rita hadn't married a desperate man. She'd married a professional. I wasn't their first victim. Just the one who knew how to fight back. I called my attorney, Samantha Cross, the next morning. Former prosecutor, sharp and direct. I told her everything. She was quiet. Then said this wasn't just civil anymore. Federal wire fraud, mail fraud, elder financial exploitation. Possibly more. She asked what I wanted to do. I told her I wanted to destroy them. But I wanted to do it right. I wanted them to walk into that courtroom thinking they'd already won. I wanted them to commit to their lies under oath. I wanted the judge to see exactly who they were before I showed her who I was. Samantha smiled. She'd hoped I would say that. Court date, March 14th. 6 weeks to prepare. I built a file, created timelines, cross-referenced documents, verified every fact 3 times. Samantha filed my response. Deliberately bland. I denied allegations. Stated I was mentally competent. Requested a hearing. That was it. No evidence attached. Nothing to tip them off. Jason called Samantha the day after. He sounded confused. That's her whole defense? Samantha said I looked forward to my day in court. Jason probably thought I was bluffing or stupid. 2 weeks before the hearing, Jason scheduled my deposition. Standard procedure, opposing attorney asks questions under oath to prepare their case. I gave him nothing. Education? Bachelor's degree in accounting. Job? Accountant. Mental health history? Saw a counselor briefly as a teenager after my parents' divorce. Shortest possible answers. No volunteering information. No defending myself. My mother watched via video link. I watched her expression shift from nervous to confused to pleased over 2 hours. She thought I was broken. She thought I'd given up. She had no idea I was a woman who'd cross-examined money launderers and embezzlers for 7 years. She had no idea the flat, boring, defeated woman in that deposition was a performance. That was a good show. The week before the hearing, Stephanie Thornton wanted to meet. Samantha advised against it. Could be a trap. But I'd seen something in the deposition video. When Jason mentioned Dennis's name, Stephanie's jaw tightened. When Rita laughed, Stephanie looked away. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop in Waukesha. Neutral territory. Stephanie wasn't what I expected. Thin, tired-looking, dark circles, fingernails bitten down. She ordered black coffee and didn't touch it. She was sorry about the statement she'd signed. Her father had written it and told her to sign it. She didn't have a choice. I asked what she meant. She looked at the table for a long time, then told me about Dennis's mother. Barbara Thornton died in 2017. 79 years old, living in a nursing home. Real dementia. Couldn't remember her own name most days. Dennis had power of attorney. Managed her finances. When she died, almost nothing left. House sold. Savings drained. Dennis said nursing home costs ate everything. Stephanie believed him at 21. But years later, she started asking questions. The numbers didn't add up. The money had gone somewhere else. She confronted her father once. Just once. She didn't tell me what happened after, but she touched the inside of her left wrist when she said it, and I understood. Dennis wasn't just a desperate man. He was a predator who'd been doing this for years. His own mother, probably his first wife, and now my grandmother. I asked why she was telling me this. She was tired. She'd been carrying it for years. She knew what was going to happen in that courtroom and didn't want to go down with them. I told her if she was willing to tell the truth under oath, I'd make sure the prosecutor knew she cooperated. She agreed. Jordan was waiting at my apartment when I got back. Thai food from the place I like. He'd been thinking. He was sorry for what he said. He'd let his parents get in his head. I showed him everything. The journal. The bank records. The forged notarization. The pattern with Dennis's mother. He read it all in silence. When he finished, he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Respect. He asked what I needed him to do. I needed him in that courtroom. I needed him to see who I really was when I was working. He wouldn't miss it for anything. The night before the hearing, I drove to Eau Claire one more time. Parked outside the cemetery where my grandmother is buried. Didn't get out. Just sat in the dark, thinking about everything she'd taught me. Paper trails don't lie. Tomorrow, the numbers were going to speak for themselves. March 14th, Milwaukee County Courthouse. 8:47 in the morning. I arrived early. Navy blazer, professional and unremarkable. I wasn't there to make a statement. I was there to win. Room 412, 4th floor. Probate and guardianship hearings. Jordan sat in the back with two colleagues who wanted to show support. Samantha sat next to me, briefcase full of documents my mother didn't know existed. Rita arrived at 9:02, fashionably late. Navy blazer and pearl earrings I recognized as my grandmother's. She must have taken them during her visits. That detail made me angrier than everything else combined. Dennis walked behind her, practiced concern on his face. Playing the supportive husband. Stephanie came in last. Didn't look at anyone. Sat at the far end and stared at her hands. All rise. The Honorable Helen Foster presiding. Judge Foster entered. Put on her reading glasses. Looked at the case file. Looked at the petitioner's table. Looked at me. I saw the moment of recognition. Slight narrowing of the eyes. Small tilt of the head. She didn't say anything, but I knew she knew. Jason gave his opening statement. 12 minutes. Painted a picture of a concerned mother estranged due to family conflict. Described my grandmother as vulnerable and manipulated. Presented my therapy records as evidence of mental instability. Never once mentioned what I did for a living. He assumed an accountant was just an accountant. Judge Foster asked if the petitioner wished to make a statement. Rita stood, smoothed her blazer, spoke calmly at first about her concern. Then something shifted. Her voice rose. She pointed at me and said I was mentally sick, incompetent, always unstable, should never control finances or inherit from the woman I'd supposedly manipulated. I didn't flinch, kept my hands folded, waited. Judge Foster watched without expression, then turned to Jason. Counselor, do you truly have no idea who this woman is? The woman your client just called mentally incompetent? Jason looked confused. Checked his notes. She's an accountant, Your Honor. Works for a firm in Milwaukee. The judge looked at him for a long moment, then turned to Samantha. Samantha stood, said we'd like to present evidence that would reframe the court's understanding. Judge Foster nodded. Samantha opened her briefcase, handed copies to the clerk and judge, started with bank records, walked through the timeline. $47,850 over 11 months. 7 withdrawals, each within 3 days of a Rita Thornton visit. Jason's face didn't change at first. Then Samantha presented the power of attorney, pointed out the notary stamp, presented Bob Mitchell's retirement records showing he'd surrendered his commission in October 2019. Document dated March 2024. Jason went pale. Samantha presented the journal. Read entries aloud. My grandmother's voice from beyond the grave, explaining exactly what had been done to her. I watched my mother's face. Confusion. Shock. Then something like indignation. She wasn't ashamed. She was angry she'd been caught. Dennis sat very still. A man who'd been through this before and knew when the game was over. Samantha finished with the pattern. Dennis's mother. Suspicious financial activity. Money disappeared. She noted the FBI had been notified and was opening an investigation. Silence. Judge Foster looked at Jason. Asked if he had anything to say. Jason asked for a recess. She granted it. I watched Jason walk to Rita. Leaned down and whispered in her ear. Her face went from angry to confused to pale. He was telling her who I was. What I did. How many times I'd testified in this courtroom. She looked at me then. For the first time in 19 years, my mother really looked at me. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. Just looked back and waited. When court resumed, Jason announced his client wished to withdraw her petition. Judge Foster shook her head. Given the evidence, she wasn't prepared to simply dismiss. She was referring the case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges, also forwarding evidence to the FBI. She looked at my mother one more time, then at me. Petition denied with prejudice. Over in less than 2 hours. No drama. No screaming. Just evidence presented clearly and judgment delivered quietly. That's how justice actually works. Not with explosions, but with paper trails. The FBI moved fast. Special Agent Michelle Davis called 3 days later. She'd reviewed everything. Pulled Dennis's financial history going back 15 years. Found patterns I hadn't even discovered. Dennis and Rita were arrested April 2nd. Federal charges. Wire fraud, mail fraud, financial exploitation. 18-page indictment. Investigation into Dennis's mother's estate reopened. Forensic accountants found over $200,000 in unexplained transfers. Barbara Thornton had owned her home outright. Healthy pension. Saved carefully. By the time she died, nothing left. Dennis had done this to his own mother, then taught his wife how to do it to mine. Stephanie testified for the prosecution. Told them everything. In exchange, she received immunity. I don't know if that was fair, but she was as much his victim as anyone. The trial lasted 2 weeks. I didn't attend most of it, had my own cases. But I was there for the verdict. Rita, guilty on 4 counts. 5 years federal prison. At least 4 before parole. Full restitution of $47,850, plus interest and penalties. Dennis, guilty on 7 counts. 6.5 years, federal facility in Minnesota. Laundromats seized and liquidated. Money to creditors and restitution. House sold at auction. Every piece of the life they built on stolen money dismantled and scattered. I received a letter from my mother 2 months after sentencing. Didn't open it. Gave it to Samantha, who said it was 6 pages of excuses and self-pity without a single genuine apology. She asked if I wanted to respond. No. Some paper trails aren't worth following. My grandmother's estate was settled in July. I kept the house. Jordan and I go there some weekends when we need quiet. Drink coffee on the porch where she used to sit with her checkbook on Sunday mornings. I kept her journal too. Not as evidence, that's over. I kept it because it's her voice preserved on paper, reminding me that even when she was scared and ashamed, she never stopped fighting for me. Jordan proposed in October. Olive Garden on Route 9 in Waukesha, where we had our first date 5 years ago. The food's not spectacular, but the breadsticks are unlimited and the memories are good. I said yes. My grandmother would have liked him. She always told me I needed someone steady. Someone who wouldn't run when things got hard. My firm reinstated me the week after the hearing. My boss apologized personally. First case back was an 84-year-old woman in Kenosha whose nephew stole $89,000 from her retirement account. We got every penny back. He got 4 years. Some people think revenge is about anger. About hurting the people who hurt you. That's not what it is. Revenge is about balance. Making sure people who think they can take whatever they want learn the world doesn't work that way. Proving that patience and integrity and careful documentation will always beat cruelty and greed. My mother thought I was weak because I was quiet. Thought I was broken because I didn't fight back immediately. Thought she could take everything because she'd gotten away with it before. She forgot I was raised by a woman who kept receipts. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about people who refused to be victims and fought back with everything they had. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most dangerous one. The truth always comes out, it's just a matter of who's keeping the receipts.